Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I wish I could be with you in person. I think it's actually terrific we're in Florida. The only state I could think it would be better to be in today would be Georgia, where we can celebrate record voter turnout despite all the claims made on the left of attempts to limit voter access. What we actually saw yesterday in Georgia was record voter turnout, both on the Democrat and on the Republican side, despite there even being a competitive Democratic primary. I'd say that's success. What we're actually seeing is laws being put in place that make it easy to vote and hard to cheat. And so I think it's important now that we've seen the success in Georgia. It's important that we're having this hearing about access to the ballot in Florida, because I think Florida has worked hard to strengthen their laws to ensure free, fair, and secure elections. So is Wisconsin, as I mentioned, Georgia. Voters are noticing, and there's increased turnout at the polls, which is good for our democracy. You see, we don't need top-down federal mandates. States who have primary authority over elections are in the best position to understand their voter needs and how to address them. Florida actually is a perfect example of this. Since the infamous 2000 election with the hanging chads, they identified problems in the process and fixed them in ways that worked for Florida voters. And once that trust was restored, voter turnout increased. In 2002, voter turnout was 55%, according to Florida's Division of Elections. In 2020, voter turnout was 77%, the highest in 20 years. And just for comparison, because it's hard to do apples to apples, Delaware, home state of our president, had a lower voter turnout rate of just over 68%. This effect is not contained to just Florida. My home state in Wisconsin has implemented photo ID and had one of the highest election turnout rates in the country in 2020. Georgia is seeing an impressive increase in voter turnout after updating their election laws. The proof is in the pudding from the results yesterday. I want to read from a Washington Post article published prior to the election this weekend, in particular as it relates to voter turnout. They said, quote, after 3 weeks of early voting ahead of Tuesday's primary, yesterday's primary, record-breaking turnout is undercutting predictions that Georgia Election Integrity Act of 2021 would lead to a fall off in voting. By the end of Friday, last Friday, the final day of early in-person voting, nearly 800,000 Georgians had cast ballots, more than 3 times the number in 2018 and higher than even in the 2020 presidential year. The fact is federalism works. We don't need to nationalize our elections and unconstitutionally take power away from states as those who support H.R. 1 proposed. Laws like H.R. 1 would have actually made it harder for Florida and Georgia to implement the necessary safeguards that have ultimately restored voter confidence while also increasing participation. Laws like H.R. 1 would instead have the opposite impact, undermining voter confidence because it would gut common sense voter integrity provisions like voter ID. We hear disinformation from those on the left and the Biden administration constantly that states with new election integrity laws are suppressing voters, that common sense voter integrity provisions like voter ID will make it harder to vote. President Biden even received 4 Pinocchios for his claims about the Georgia election law. With all these clearly factually inaccurate statements coming from the Biden administration and those on the left, it's too bad maybe that we don't have Biden's disinformation czar to help us with the fact checks, because the proof is in the pudding from yesterday when we saw massive and record-breaking voter participation in Georgia following their laws to improve voter integrity in Georgia. Instead of attacking key voter integrity provisions and undermining trust, we should be working together to restore faith in our elections. Those on the left continue to make unsubstantiated claims. The Republican-led states like Florida are trying to suppress voters. They are chipping away at America's confidence in our republic. And I suggest to my colleagues who are currently down in the great state of Florida that they take some time to actually learn what the state is doing and take some notes to share with their colleagues from other states, because to me it's clear that what the Sunshine State is doing is not suppressing voter turnout. What we saw play out in Georgia did not suppress voter turnout. And in fact, some of the states that we hear the biggest complaints about are actually able to generate the highest voter participation because people are beginning to gain trust in their elections. It's those on the left who are undermining our democracy by making false claims. I look forward to today's hearing, and Mr. Chairman, I yield back.